Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Punch, Kick, Choke Chat. We had a 3-week pause there. It actually is more like a month because of the Thursday to Thursday, and I really appreciate y'all hanging with me while I had to take off and sort of sequester to do some work. I couldn't be happier to be back tonight. I'm really excited to chat with our guest, and it's just such an honor and a pleasure to be able to host this with my peers and my betters and my teachers. And I was really giddy tonight. I was watching some TV with my girlfriend. I was like, oh my God, I get to go do the interview tonight. She's like, are you ready? And I'm like, I actually feel as nervous as the first time we did it because of the break. And I think that's a really good thing. I think that nerves can make us sharp. I know it helps me. Every week, I get the pleasure of introducing Sensei Nicholas Suino, and I always start with the basics. He's an 8th Dan in Iaido. He's a 6th Dan in Judo. He's a 6th Dan in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. And there's something we talked about when he was our first guest, and it's something I've stressed since. But in 1988, he moved to Japan. And I just, aside from the fact he went there and was the first non-Japanese person to win every year of his Iaido championships, which no one had ever done outside of Japan before, for me, what's so amazing is that a time pre-internet, you can just Google, best flight, place to stay in Tokyo. That did not exist for anybody younger than us. It was a different world. And that's what impresses me most, Sensei Suino. The wins are great, but you had to get there and put everything on the line to get those wins. So I'm so proud to know you for that tonight. How you doing?
Doing great, thank you. It's so great to have you back and to be back in this seat. Yeah, moving to Japan was an amazing experience, and like almost everything I've done in life where I've had even a little bit of success, it depended on other people, right? So I had some connections in Japan, a few introductory letters, and that made all the difference. It would have been much tougher, right? With no place to land, nobody to talk to. Yeah, real kick-ass experience. So happy to be here. That was a long time ago. And I'm sure the next question is, what have you done for me lately? And I have not won any All Japan Iaido competitions lately. But I'm happy to say today is my wife's birthday. She's been 29 for about 25 years. And she turned 32 today, so that was interesting. I was reflecting on the fact that she started martial arts with me and trained about 7 years, and then had a hugely destructive lower back problem, a blown disc that took her out of training for a long time. When she rehabilitated that, she came back. She trained with me for about 3 or 4 years, and then got pregnant and had our daughter, Erica, and that took her out for another decade. But she's back at it. She will drop a dumbass, and don't walk down the alley with my wife, those of you who know her, because she'll mess you up. That's what I have to say on that.
I love it.
It falls to me each time we do this interview to introduce Sensei Randy Dauphin. And I am, it's hard to imagine running out of good things to say about him. But out here on the foothills of senility, sometimes it's hard enough to remember my own name, much less anybody else's and what they've done. Randy is a multi-time champion in martial arts, in karate fighting and kata. He is a top student, I would like to say, of Hanshi Gary Legacy, who is right next to him in my thumbnails up here. A longtime friend and martial artist, and mentor, which I think goes both ways in our relationship. So that's cool. I haven't seen Randy. I don't know how long it's been since we've seen each other in person. This stupid COVID has messed up those harebrained visits where you come down and train for 2 days and we talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. But that is, everybody should have a friend like Randy, somebody that you can talk about anything with, who inspires you, who trains harder than you to keep you motivated, and at the same time is endlessly loyal and respectful, not to me, but also to Hanshi Legacy. Randy, I'm so privileged to know you, so thankful that our paths have come together. And I can't wait to see what kinds of crazy stuff you do next.
That's it. Thanks so much for that. It's interesting that this is the longest we've gone, I think, since you came back from Japan without seeing each other in person. 25 years. But I was driving around and I was daydreaming about this. I know that the driving border is closed, and then I was like, but I could fly to Detroit. I could fly from Toronto to Detroit, and then you could come and pick me up there. And then I just have to quarantine for 14 days when I get back. But the good thing about that is when I got back, I could quarantine for 14 days and work on all the shit I've been screwing up in my Iaido for 14 days. And it would actually get burned in there like really, really good if I did that. So that's on my mind, and I'm thinking about doing it. Well, it's great to see you, Sensei.
We'll make it happen. Let me know.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It falls to me to always get to introduce our guest, and I always release some facts about Hanshi Legacy. Some of them are well known and some of them are repeated, but it's good for people to hear them over and over again. It's come up recently in various conversations about who was there when Sensei joined and when and how. And he joined karate February 17th, 1971. Is that right, Sensei? Did I get the day right? February 17th?
28th.
Okay, I'm going to change my notes. February 28th, 1971. Which is, coincidentally, which is 10 months before I was born. So he joined 10 months before I was born. And his first karate teacher when he went in the dojo was Harold Warden. And an interesting thing about Harold Warden is he actually paid for Sensei Legacy's instruction with Benny Allen. He paid for his initial lessons, which we all benefit from, and many people have benefited from that selfless act. So he trained with Benny Allen. Benny Allen was, in my mind, the guy who put all the horsepower into Sensei Legacy, or at least taught him how to drive that fancy horsepower that he had already. And they actually even lived together for a time. And one thing that I've actually been able to see is I was able to see Sensei Legacy's fourth Dan certificate that Sensei Benny Allen gave to him. And this would be shocking for students of today. It was written on 3-ring paper. It was on a 3-ring piece of paper, and it was in Benny Allen's handwriting. The grading, it was like, I hereby grade Gary Legacy to a 4th degree black belt, and Okichi no Sai Benoit Karate, Benny Allen, 8th degree black belt. So that's interesting that how far it's come since then. He also trained with Master Richard Kim for 10 years. He's currently a student of Master Anthony Sandoval, who was the one who graded him to his 6th through 10th dans. Another interesting thing is that Hanshi Legacy really loves a good adventure. He's got a very adventurous spirit. He likes things like Robin Hood and thinking about a great imagination. My first time on a plane was with him, and we traveled to Vancouver. I had never been on a plane before, but that was my first time on a plane. We went to Vancouver. Since then, we've traveled in planes, trains, and automobiles to exotic places like Vancouver, Rimouski, Montreal, Buffalo, Kentucky, Tennessee, California, North Carolina. More exotic, we've been to Venezuela together, Panama, Dominican Republic, Japan, and Okinawa, mainland Japan and Okinawa. And most recently, this weekend, we traveled to Ottawa, where we spent a few days with Hanshi John Terrian. Man, that guy knows how to treat people really well. Thank you, Hanshi Terrian, for an amazing weekend. And we got to spend a brief amount of time with the champ, Jean-Yves Theriault, who is also such a friendly, nice person, probably because he didn't have hand and foot equipment on and we weren't in the ring standing across from him. So those are the facts that I'd like to just put out there about Hanshi Legacy. But I'm really excited to introduce Kyoshi Marion Manzo. Thank you, Kyoshi, for coming on the show tonight. She has a BA in communication and marketing. She already announced earlier to Sensei Suino that she's a New Yorker. She's an author. She's an 8th degree black belt. First woman inducted in the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. Director of Northern Karate School's Midtown Dojo and on the Northern Karate School's Board of Directors. This is very interesting. She received her Shodan from Sensei Toyotaro Miyazaki, who was actually a student of Gichin Funakoshi. So that's who she got her Shodan from, which that's something to say. Like That's an important piece of paper. But she also has certifications from the World Kabuto Federation and the All Okinawan Karate Federation. She was a NASCA top 10 female competitor for many years. She's very active in her community, organizing fundraising for Kids Help Phone, Canadian Cancer Society, Ronald McDonald Children's Society, and the United Way. She has her own branded Leg Sensei Suino and Sensei Benson. She's a physical fitness enthusiast as well, and she has her own branded yoga and cardio program, which are Cardio Combat and Budo Bliss. And I believe those are trademarked, so don't try and rip those off, or you're going to be in big trouble if you try and use that stuff without her permission. Something that you and I have in common that I found out, Kyoshi, is that we were both brought to karate by fellow university students. So I was brought to Hanshi Legacy's dojo by a fellow university student, and you were also brought to your dojo by a fellow university student. So on the note of travel, it's a rumor that you hate turbulence, but you love travel. Also a rumor that you especially love travel with your husband, Hanshi Caesar Burkowski. Another rumor is that you can eat your own body weight in chocolate, which you don't look like you're too overweight, so that's not quite as impressive. I want to say that Robert and I chatted with Kyoshi last week, and she's a very intelligent person. She very quickly turned the tables on us and was interviewing us and finding out facts about us before we could find out facts about her. She truly is a pioneer in martial arts. I was thinking about this today while I was working out in here by myself. The stories that we've heard so far from back in the 60s and the 70s, you know, when you come to a dojo today, it's a very welcoming place. People greet you, they welcome you in. If you go back to the 60s and the 70s, even sometimes into the 80s, it wasn't always quite so welcoming. The people who were there were a lot of tough people trying to get tougher and not really interested per se in a sense of community. But that's the world that Kyoshi Manzo decided that she was going to step into. And we did talk about this. You know, today in a class, it's often a 50-50 split between girls and boys in a karate class, and people don't really see a distinction anymore. I don't think that was quite the case when Sensei Manzo joined karate. I think it was a different world, and I'm excited to hear about it. I really admire her courage to take that up and go in there, and I also admire her courage to stay. She really is truly a pioneer in martial arts, and I'm really excited to hear what she has to say tonight. And thank you so much for being on. Sean, take it away.
Thank you, Sensei Dauphin. It's always a pleasure to hear your intros. So some quick housekeeping notes to everybody watching before we get into the meat of this. That is the meat. The intros are part of the meat. We want your questions. Down at the bottom, there's a chat button. And if you type in your questions for Kyoshi or for us to direct towards her, or just general ideas you want to talk about, they'll get funneled through to us. And if they're crappy questions, they won't get funneled through to us. So make them good ones. And also, if you have any issue with any of the content of these episodes, we don't really care. We don't. Like, we just don't care at all. We're having a chat. You're watching the chat. That's the beginning and end of it. We're so happy you're here. We don't care if you have any concerns. We really don't. But we're happy you're here. But we don't care if you have any. Kyoshi Manzo, it's such a pleasure to have you. And I always like to ask our guests, how do you like your intro? How do you like being talked up like that?
I mean, first of all, when you're talking about things like being a pioneer and all those things, I feel old when you're talking that way. But also, I should make one correction. Miyazaki Sensei's teacher wasn't Funakoshi; it was Okano Sensei, and Okano Sensei was trained by Gichin Funakoshi. So I want to just correct that. And yes, you're absolutely right. I think that, I mean, some of our training, I'm sure if I asked all of you how you came to martial arts, oftentimes it's not really planned. It's not like, well, I have this plan to go to a dojo. Sometimes it's just serendipity. And I happened to be in university and had one of my longtime friends, my beloved friend, John Arena, and I were working on a film about women's self-defense, and it was the 1970s. So the women's movement was in full swing, and we wanted to do something interesting. So we interviewed a woman who was an instructor for the National Rifle Association, a woman who was a detective with the New York Sex Crimes Unit, and then women from the Women's Martial Arts Center, Susan Murdoch and the Women's Martial Arts Center. And I was floored. I was like, my God, there are women doing this. So he was a martial artist. He was a black belt or brown belt at the time. He took me to a class on campus. And from that point forward, I was hooked. I started on campus, moved off campus to the dojo. And it was quite a sweet deal because my university allowed me to take classes during the summer as an independent study. And I got credits for doing it. So here I was kicking and punching. The university was covering the tuition for it, and I was getting credit. So I don't know that you could negotiate that kind of a deal now, but it worked back in the 70s. And then another just happenstance, I went to a dojo with a friend of mine, and she was interested in Miyazaki Sensei's dojo. And she said, come and watch this with me and see what you think. I wound up signing up. She didn't. And from there, I just stayed with martial arts. That's how I met my husband. That's how I came to the job that I do now. So I feel very fortunate. And I think you're absolutely right, Randy. The makeup of the students then was very skewed male. And now there are so many women. I was amazed when I came to Northern and I saw the number of women, the number of senior women within our organization. Now we have not only senior ranked women, we also have school directors and co-directors who just happen to be women. It's less about their gender and more about their qualifications. So things have changed a lot. So, I mean, thank you for the introduction, but believe me, this is like a long time coming. And it's humbling sometimes when I'm surrounded by people like yourselves and the people on the screen.
That's really wonderful to break that open for us. So I want to go a little further with that. So just talk to me about where you were born, where you grew up, and a little bit of that background that made the martial arts appealing to you. Because I always love to know that bit. Like you walk into the dojo, you're hooked, but who's the woman who walked in? Where's she from? What was the childhood like in terms of making martial arts attractive?
As I said, I'm from New York originally. Mm-hmm. And I think New Yorkers are sort of raised to be very assertive, very energetic. That's who we are as a people. I'm also the middle of 6 children. So I'm the middle child of 6 in a family that was half Italian and half Irish. So we learned to speak up and be assertive. I mean, if you didn't speak up, you didn't get fed. So you're right in the middle. And my mother is a very strong woman. I came from a family of very strong, resourceful, independent women. So I had that model early on. My sisters are like that. My mom, my grandmother, very, very strong women. I mean, my mother is blind. She's blind from birth. And she raised 6 children. And she lives on her own at age 99. I mean, just, you know, she has caregivers, but she lives on her own. Mm-hmm. So if that's the model you have, coming to martial arts is a pretty natural transition. And at the time when I was younger, you know, doing any kind of exercise was really, it wouldn't have aligned with martial arts. So I think I just happened to come to it at the right time for me. See, people often ask you guys probably, how did you come to martial arts? I think the martial arts came to me because I was living the life at that point where, you know, I'm a university student. It's the 70s. You know, I don't have to tell you guys that, you know, maybe some of the choices then were different than the choices you would make now. But I really feel like the martial arts found me, and it was the right time, and just everything intersected at the right moment.
And so then it sounds like you had some options, like you can go this way, 70s, or you can go towards something more disciplined with deeper roots. And what was that first while in the dojo like? And as Sensei Do-fan really, you know, likes to hear about, and also might ask a few more questions about, who were the people you were training with? Who were your compadres at your level, but also the ones you were looking up to, and in retrospect are like, wow, they were there?
Well, as I said, I trained first on campus, and the instructor there was a sensei by the name of Ken Nielsen. We're still, you know, friendly with him now. Mm-hmm. But he studied with a student of Peter Urban's. He was doing USA Goju. So I started in Goju, or USA Goju. and then went to Miyazaki Sensei's dojo. And Miyazaki was, I mean, it was a very different environment. It was very Japanese, no terminology. You know, if you made a mistake, you were hit. And it was just a different mindset. There were no women, but the men there, some of the men were very supportive. It was very interesting to see the divide, and other ones just sort of tolerated, you know, having a woman there. But I was the kind of person where, you know, if it was going to be difficult, then I was going to embrace the challenge. So I enjoyed that. So I could have gone, you're right, Sean, I could have gone this way. And instead I had the good fortune to have the guidance of teachers and fellow students, guys that were, as I said, really kind of either challenging me or supporting me. Either way, they were going to make me a better martial artist. So I decided to go this way instead.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you I mean, you mentioned it in our chat, and in the context of being the first woman in the Black Belt Hall of Fame, you know, it's part of our conversation. Were you conscious of it at that time? Were you like, fuck, I'm the only woman in this class, or fuck, these guys are being dicks? Or is it more like, I'm just going to train, that's my life in all of the milieus I'm in, whether it's professionally, you know, was it a real conscious thing that you had to work through? Or was it just kind of in retrospect, yeah, that's what you had to do as a woman then?
I don't think it was ever, I mean, I was conscious of it, but I wasn't going to let it be an obstacle.
Right.
So it was there. And there's, as I said, there's always going to be the guys who are like, you know, well, let's hit her just a little bit harder. And I was probably the same size as I am now. You know, I'm like 94 pounds and you know, 5'2", and they're going to, you know, make your life interesting. But then there were guys like Paul Vizio, who was, I don't know if you know Paul Vizio, he's a kickboxer and someone who was as adept at kickboxing as he was at doing kata. I mean, he was just beautiful to watch fighting and beautiful to watch doing kata. And he was the guy who would just, you know, train you hard, but he would also want you to excel. He didn't want to hurt or break you, but he did expect you to toe the line. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's why people go to a martial arts school even now. They want to be challenged. They want to be able to get the best out of themselves. It was difficult from time to time, but everything's going to be difficult. Life is difficult sometimes. I worked in sports marketing. You know, that's not necessarily a very egalitarian environment.
Right.
But you can either say, okay, that's what it is. Those are the rules of the game, and I'm going to play the game. And I think whether you're in a dojo or outside, that's how it is. So I've always been that way.
Yeah, I love that. It's actually something I'm getting from you that I get from my New Yorker friends and my American friends, having lived there a fair bit. And I really love that. You know, it is what it is, and you got to work through it. Sensei Dauphin, is there anything you want to crack open about that time at all, or go more at?
Yeah, the thing I'm curious about, you mentioned some names there, Kyoshi. Did you ever cross paths with Peter Urban? Like, did you back in the day?
Yes, I used to compete at tournaments in New York, in Brooklyn and other boroughs in New York. And he was often one of the judges. And he was sort of famous or infamous for having his own flip cards. So you know how people had flip cards in the day? You know, I'm sure Hachi Legacy remembers this. You didn't, you know, you either held your hands up or you had flip cards. Well, it didn't matter what the rules were. He had his own set of flip cards. And he was the only judge I ever saw who had a 0 flip card. And if you really detested what you did, he would give you a 0, but he would turn his back and flip the card 0 at you. And you thought, okay, if we're not having a shitty day, I am now.
He's like excommunicating you as well as giving you a 0.
It was just,
You're dead to me.
In that moment. So yeah, I did have a chance to meet him. But, you know, didn't really spend a lot of time with him because, as I said, I started in USA Goju, but then transitioned to Shotokan.
How about Kenozawa Sensei? Because I think he was in New York quite a bit. Did you ever cross paths with him?
No, because I have a very a friend at the time, Kathy Baxter. She's quite well. You might know her, Sensei Suino. Kathy Baxter lived in Okinawa. She's quite well known in the US and in Europe, but she was pretty quick to correct me when I said, we do traditional Shotokan. And she said, no, you don't. And I was so insulted. I was like, what? And she said, no, you do Miyazaki Shotokan. So really, we didn't spend a lot of time with traditional Shotokan people. Did not have an opportunity to meet people like Kenozawa Sensei, but we all knew of him. And at tournaments, we had a chance to kind of rub shoulders with people that were, you know, legendary. And, you know, that was a good experience, good learning experience.
Okay. The other thing I always wonder about is, we've asked this of everybody since the Suino. Who were your compadres? Like, who were your confidants? Who was your crew when you went to the dojo? Did you have one? Did you have people like after, let's go get a beer, let's go get a coffee, who were those people and what did they mean to you back then?
Well, I had certain friends at Miyazaki Sensei's dojo. Pat Lee was one of my friends there. Because there were no women, they were all guys. But my longest and dearest, as I said, my most beloved friend is John Arena. And he was someone who has really encouraged me to continue training. He is an extraordinary pizzaiolo in Las Vegas, but he's also has a dojo in Las Vegas as well. And every time my husband and I go down there and our colleagues go down there, we all teach down there. And we always joke that we'll teach for food because he winds up feeding us like the best pizza in the world. But he's really my confidant, other than my husband. And now I have a best friend south of the border, that's John Arena, for like more than 45 years. And my other best friend north of the border is Kim Brancaccio. So I don't know if you guys know Vito Brancaccio and Kim Brancaccio. She and I have been friends for over 25 years. She and her husband run a very successful dojo in Mississauga. And she's like my other confidant rather, here when I'm talking about martial arts.
I actually want to go back to what you said about the Miyazaki Shotokan versus traditional Shotokan. Have you since unlocked the difference for yourself in a way? And could you elucidate it? And does it matter?
It doesn't matter. I mean, you know, I always think what people brand as traditional or classical and modern is simply a matter of perspective. You know, I'm sure you could find somebody who thinks, well, my style is far more traditional or classical than your style is, mine is more progressive or modern. One thing I learned from Hanshi Bukowski is that, you know, when he's not fond of the term traditional, because it seemed to kind of root people in a way that wouldn't let them evolve. So he prefers classical and cutting edge, or classical and modern. And I've really kind of changed my view. What I used to think was traditional, I now think it's just a matter of perspective. I mean, how do you feel about that, Sensei Suino?
Well, you can put me on the spot.
Of course.
Yes.
I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you this was coming.
I tried
it. Are you asking me what my definition of traditional is, or you said, how do you feel about that? What do you mean? What question are you asking me?
When people use those two terms, traditional or classical, or traditional or modern, do you think that that's really a difference without, or a distinction without difference? Or do you think that actually matters? Or do you think it's a matter of opinion and perspective?
I think in a broad sense, there is such a thing as traditional martial arts and modern martial arts. But when you use those terms and what value they have varies tremendously between different people. A lot of times, if I'm talking to Hanshi Legacy and Randy, we're talking about traditional. We have a set of values that we kind of share about hard work, about integrity, about the martial arts techniques actually being applicable in fighting. Right? Not just academic, not just kata. And so in that sense, there's a lot of values that I think that I associate with traditional martial arts. But I also think there's a ton of value in modern martial arts. I think the UFC is one of the best things that ever happened to realism in martial arts. So I don't have it's not a value judgment. It's a way of differentiating the two types. Does that make sense?
Well said. Yeah, it is. Hanshi Legacy, do you agree?
I do. I like to use the term classical because there are modern day people who are just as smart as the ancient day persons. So I like to use classical, and it depicts a strain that has a teacher, and as opposed to someone who just learns a bit of everything but will never become a master. But modern doesn't mean it's not classical.
No, exactly. And I think you're right. Sometimes people think if they brand something traditional or classical, then it has a specific lineage.
Yes.
Yeah. And I agree with Sensei Suino as well. I think it's not always a matter of technique, but a matter of values. Do they have those classical values? Does it have that lineage? Which is far more important than, you know, how it's branded. Is it modern? Is it traditional?
Can I jump in there? When somebody says classic to me, I think of something that has history.
Yeah.
Right? Like something that has a bit of a history to it, right? So there's classic automobiles, but new modern automobiles are still good too. I like those ones as well. They just don't necessarily have the same history as something that's classical. So that's one thing. And then, so I like that term, classical. Traditional, I think even if you're modern, you can be traditional because tradition comes in your dojo. It comes from somebody who taught you. You know, all of us have Christmas traditions. We all have these types of things, but neither of those things should be constraining. Mm-hmm. Neither of those definitions should stop you from exploring. And if they do, then you shouldn't use them anymore. You should find new words to use, in my opinion. But that's my thinking on that.
No, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think that it does have a heritage. It does have a lineage. And it is imbued with certain values. And I think that can be true whether it's, you know, deemed a classical or traditional system or a modern system.
Right. Like the head of our system, Sokan Bushi Matsumura, he's the guy who put it together, right? So by the definition of today's standards, you couldn't say that he would be a modern martial artist of his time because he learned from many different teachers and put it together and then pass that forward, which is kind of what a lot of students do today, and they get grief for that. They get grief for doing that.
Huh. Interesting.
Hey, Kyoshi, before we get too far away from your history, what part of New York are you from?
It's interesting. I was born in Brooklyn, but then we moved to Queens. And then when I was a kid, I went to Catholic school. I went to school in the Bronx. And then lived and worked in Manhattan. The only place where I haven't spent any time is Staten Island.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
I don't know why, but that's how it is. But I was born in Brooklyn and we moved to Queens.
I have a lot of roots. I've had family that lives mostly in Manhattan or parts thereabouts. So I was just curious kind of, you know, where you kicked around.
Where in Manhattan, do you know?
My mother lived all over the place. She lived up in the northern side of Manhattan for a while, but the last place she lived before she left New York City was in Chinatown.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of cool, yeah. So we walk by Chinese restaurants to get to her place. But my sister has a place on the west side, up on the Upper West Side near Columbia, and just have a lot of roots there.
Very cool.
Kyoshi, I'm going to chip in here. We have our first question. I love this question, by the way, Sid. So this is from Sydney Dauphin, and it's right about what we're talking about. So I want to chip in with it. Where does the intention behind traditional or classical martial arts as something to save your life in a time before modern police, etc., where does that surface in today's classical martial arts?
Well, I think when people think about self-defense or saving your life, there's a lot of ways that can be interpreted. I mean, if you're talking about strict technique, you know, the reality is if someone has a gun and they're standing far enough away from you, you can't disarm them. But if you're thinking about saving your life in a more philosophical sense, then it certainly has a place in modern life. So if you're thinking martial arts should be about, you know, self-perfection, self-protection, it should be about all of those things. But the idea that we develop the resilience to face things. I mean, right now we're going through a very tough time all around the world. And if martial arts teaches us nothing, it should be able to teach us the skills that we can withstand this and more, especially if we are a community like we are here. So if it is a question of protecting yourself, having skills that you can defend yourself, having a strong body, mind, and spirit is part and parcel of all martial arts. And that's as relevant now as it would have been 100 years ago. So it's still very applicable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and so right along those lines, and again, this is your time. You say no, or you go as deep as this as you want. Jennifer Naveau Campsell said, "Could Kyoshi please tell her New York mugging story?"
Ooh.
You got a mugging story?
Oh no, not a mugging story. I was going to university, and I was probably a purple belt at the time, and I was waiting for the bus. Because, you know, you're a university student, you're taking the bus. Nobody had a car. So I'm waiting for the bus, and it's early in the morning. And I'm not paying attention. You know, you're tired, you go to school. And a guy shoved me from behind. And I thought he was just being like a jerk. And he shoved me again, and he just grabbed from around. And I just released, elbowed, punched him in the face. And I went after him, which is like the dumbest thing in the world. But I was mad. I was angry, and it was early, and I'm a cantankerous woman. So he ran, and he jumped in a car. And I reached in, and I grabbed him. I just kept punching away because I was just so angry. And he took off. I called the police, and I reported it. It turned out that the car was stolen. He had broken into a house. And I was pretty lucky that it didn't get worse, because he was obviously, you know, like a fairly desperate individual. And then when I told Miyazaki Sensei the story, I said, well, I defended myself. He said, why do you run after him? He was furious that I went after the guy and I chased him, because it could have turned out much worse. If he'd had a gun in the car, if he'd had a knife in the car, he just, you know, it was a stupid rookie mistake. But in the moment, you know, it's like one of those things when you're, you know, a purple belt, you think, you know, damn, I got skills. And it was dumb. And I got humbled in a second by Miyazaki Sensei over this. But it stayed in my brain, because in that moment, I wasn't scared. I was just really, really pissed off. And that, I think that's, you know, just who I am.
So I'd love to ask a question of you, and then actually throw it around the horn if we don't mind. But, you know, a lot of martial artists have that switch that makes you go after someone. Not everybody. I'm not even sure I do. But how important is having an experience like that? Because that's the kind of person you are, so you got to let it out a bit. And how important is it to go, no, never? You know, how important is that switch of aggression, and what's the limit of it?
I think that as you progress through the martial arts, you realize that you have to be able to control that switch. Doesn't matter if that's innate or not. You have to be able to turn that switch on and off. If you can't, then you're really not a martial artist. I mean, I can have a pretty crazy temper sometimes, but with age, I think too, you sort of mellow, and you realize there's some things that are worth fighting for, and some things that are not. I mean, I teach women self-defense, and I said the first thing you want to suss out is, what do they want? Do they want your purse? Give them your purse. Fight's over. There's nothing in that purse that's worth your life. When I was younger, I probably wouldn't have felt that way. I probably would have said, well, you know, it's an invasion of my space, and, you know, and all this other stuff, and I'm not giving my stuff up, blah, blah, blah. Now, as a, you know, a more mature woman, and hopefully a more mature martial artist, I think there's nothing in that bag. They want your card, give them your card, take your keys, have a nice day, I'm out. If they touch you, then you have to be able to turn that switch on. So once you are touched, then it's non-negotiable, and that switch should go on. And I think that's one of the hardest things sometimes to teach people. They either I almost think it's part of their DNA, and you can either stimulate it or, you know, get at, you know, kind of tweak it out of them a little bit. But if someone is generally a passive person, it's often quite hard. And I don't mean somebody who can turn that switch on, but somebody who's very, very passive. It's very, very hard, whether you're teaching them sparring or self-defense, to kind of get that warrior out of them. Don't you agree, Hanchi Legacy? I mean, you train a lot of people, and you're an exceptional fighter, so I'm going to defer to you. Do you think that there are certain people that have that kind of switch turned on innately, and then other people who, no matter how much you want them to get that energy out of them, it's not part of their nature?
Well, I know, and I remember that most times in my earlier years, and so does probably your husband. Remember that I was all about fighting. I really like to fight, but I think after a while you get wiser and you have to be smart with your martial arts. It's not enough just being able to do it. It's like Rick Joslin said, or some other person, it's to change the other person's mind that's going to be your greatest achievement, because you can already fight, right? If you're trained well, you can already fight. And you don't need to prove it to yourself anymore. So you don't need to do that to yourself by hitting someone else.
Exactly.
But you need to be well trained in case something does happen.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Any of the other senseis want to chip in on that? I'd love to hear that about her question about some people don't innately have it and you can't get it out of them, or what's the limit of response?
Go ahead, Randy. Randy, go ahead.
Yeah. It's funny because I've said to people who are on this call before, your biggest problem is you can't be an asshole. Like you can't flick that switch sometimes. Like you have all the skills. You can move at light speed. You can punch somebody in the head and make it explode. But you just can't make that, like we're talking about, you can't make that changeover. I do think it's required sometimes. I think if you go, Benson, to go to something you taught me actually, which was, if you meet two assholes before noon, maybe the asshole's you, right? Like, so you definitely got to be thinking in that way, right? Like if you're just moving through life looking for these opportunities and going back to what Sensei Legacy said, you know, most of the serious conflicts I had was when I was younger. I was pre-30. After 30, it just seemed to be that with a certain look and a certain word, you could diffuse a situation a lot better than having to slam your fist into a part of somebody's body. As I got older, things that resonate with me are things that Sensei Legacy taught me in the beginning. He asked a question once. Ask yourself, would you pull a gun out and shoot this person? In this situation, would you pull a gun out and shoot this person? If the answer is yes, then you're probably justified in having a physical altercation with them. If the answer is no, maybe you should take a different path. The other thing that I think people don't do when you're talking about flicking the switch, it shouldn't be random. You should have already given some pre-thought to what causes you to flick the switch or not. Right? If you're just walking down the street and that switch is going all the time, you need to go back to the dojo. Like, you got a problem. But in my mind, you know, Sensei also taught me, decide what's going to make you act or respond, right? So, you know, you've heard me say this, Benson. If you're coming into my home in the middle of the night through a window, unannounced, my switch is probably going to be flicked, and you're probably going to meet somebody who's not happy to see you coming through that window, right? If you grab a hold of one of my kids with some malintent while I'm standing by, I'm probably going to flick the switch, right? Like, that's probably going to be something that flicks the switch. If you bumped me with your shopping cart in the grocery store, well, when I was 26, that might have flicked the switch, but now almost 50, that won't flick the switch anymore, right? I'm more apt to say, I'm really sorry. I got in your way with your shopping.
Yep. Sensei Suino, you want to chip in on that at all, or you want to?
You know, just we talked about this on episode 1. You know, you guys were asking me a little bit about my past, and I told you about how I grew up in kind of a rough neighborhood, and I had to fight a lot. And I like fighting, but I have a distaste for the chaos, the disorder that goes with it, the emotions. I don't like losing control of my emotions. I don't like the sense of injustice. And so, you know, out here on the foothills of senility, I like fighting just as much as I ever did, but I don't let myself do it very much because I don't like everything that goes with it. Right. I just don't like the chaos, the disorder, the feeling of losing control. So that's not a direct answer, but that's just kind of how I see it. Why I don't fight unless, as Randy said, you know, if someone were to hurt somebody in my family, then that would be a whole nother calculation.
Right. And if we happen to be with Pam, you don't have to worry about it.
She take care of a lot of that.
If you're with Sensei Suino's wife, you could just stand back and watch the show. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I want to bring this back to Kyoshi, but I want to go back and get you to Canada through your journey. But I want to jump in with a question here from Robert. So this jumps ahead a bit, but we may as well jump in while the question's here. From your experience in sports marketing and as director at NKS, and for anyone who doesn't know, that's Northern Karate Schools, what do you need to attract students to your dojo, and what keeps them there once they're in the door? Good question, Robert. I think we're all going to benefit from this.
And I mean, it's certainly something that we think about every day. We have a large organization, it's 14 schools, but we think of ourselves as 14 schools that are small businesses, and every day is our first day of business. Today is our first day of business. And right now we're faced with a lot of additional challenges. So I think what brings people in the door, whether it's a martial arts school or any business, is a real customer-centric or student-centric attitude. So everybody talks about student care, but how much do you care about your students? I mean, you know, are you nurturing them from day one and forward? You know, Hachi Borkowski always tells us that every class brings a student one step closer to black belt and beyond, or one step closer to the door. So every class that we teach, that's the mindset. And we have very capable people at our Hambu Dojo. Our partner is a young guy by the name of Vince Cervello. He's a Kyoshi instructor. He's capable of running that dojo, but he's also a guy who's, you know, who wants to collaborate, who's feeding off Hachi Borkowski's energy. We collaborate on a whole bunch of things, but he's mindful that every time a student does their first intro, he's going to be the guy who's then going to take them toward their Shodan and the Nidan and the Sandan and so on. And there's only one way to get there. That is to give them the best martial arts instruction and the best life skills instruction every single class. So if they're not in, we're on the phones. If they're having difficulty, you know, everybody does financially, we got to work out the math. Even if that means a full or partial scholarship, whatever it is. If they're having difficulty at home, like, you know, kids go from being sweet little kids who are at the dojo 24/7 to being kind of, you know, testy little teens, and then adults with life changes. And we have to be there every step of the way. So I think it's the same thing, whether you have a restaurant or you have a store or you have a dojo, really looking at things from the other's perspective, from the student's perspective, and finding out what they want, giving it to them every single time, and then keeping the school going with integrity is that's how we attract and keep students.
So I have two quick questions to break that open a little. You know, you use the word customer, which is totally valid. So when you're teaching, you know, a classical, even with modern spin martial art, what is the balance between student versus customer, especially given that, you know, if somebody's a white belt, they might not have enough classes under their belt to where you're really going to show them the door too many times. But in the macro of somebody's journey toward black belt, there's going to be classes where they're going to think about leaving because of the difficulty, because of the path. So how much is the big picture of, yeah, for this 2 weeks, you can think about quitting because it's going to get real hard for you before you grow?
Well, first of all, when I'm talking about customer, I'm not talking about dojo. Like, I think of our students as students. I don't think of them as customers.
Right.
When I'm talking about if you have a restaurant or a store, as I said,
got it.
Those are customers. And there's nothing wrong with thinking of your students as customers, but I prefer the term students.
Yep.
I think that there's always going to be those moments where they want to quit. And the reality is you will lose students. We have one of our directors, he was a young guy, and he was just starting to run his school. And we said, okay, we have to be prepared for the times that people are going to hit the wall. You know, Miyazaki used to tell me that progress in martial arts, people think it's like this. It's this trajectory that goes up almost like a plane taking off. And he said, no, for him, it was like this. It was this, that his trajectory went up, down, plateaued, flattened. And I always liked that analogy. I always thought about that when students were saying, well, you know, I'm getting bored. Well, I have to go to high school now, because they're the first person that ever went to high school and also did martial arts.
Right.
Well, there were all the wells. And the reality is that there will be some percentage of students that will leave no matter how much you love them, no matter how much you nurture them. You have to work hard for the students that are staying. And when you've tried everything and they're still going out the door, then you have to take that good intention and take all that energy and put it back into the students who are staying. That's the reality. So I think finding a way to keep students motivated, challenging them, but supporting them through those difficulties, supporting them, and it's kind of like lifting the person over that wall every now and then. That's our job as sensei.
Thank you. What got you from New York to Canada, and what kept you here?
A Canadian man.
Go on. Tell.
All you Canadian men, you got this thing going
yeah.
on.
Wow.
Yeah, but we have that in common, Kyoshi. We all love that same Canadian man that you fell in love with, came to Canada for. We all love him too.
Well, it's interesting because about 2 years before I met him, officially met him, we were at a tournament, and Miyazaki Sensei the whole group of us from New York, and we were from the dojo, and Miyazaki Sensei said, watch him. Watch how he does kata. Watch how he does bo. Watch how he judges. Same. And I've never heard him compliment anyone to that degree. So there's a picture of me 2 years before I met my husband, sitting on the floor watching him do kata. So I mean, talk about destiny or serendipity, you know, there it was. And then that after 2 years or 2 years later, I happened to be at a tournament, and I don't know if you know Chuck Merriman, but
he was a guest on our show a few weeks ago.
Oh, I adore the man. Anyway, he knew Miyazaki Sensei, and I was at a tournament by myself, and he was kind enough to kind of, you know, look after me a little bit because I was there by myself. And he introduced me to Cesar Borkowski. I don't know if you know Cesar Borkowski, but the funny story was when I was checking into the hotel, Cesar's gonna kill me. When I was checking into the hotel, I heard this guy on the house phone, and I was checking in, and he was doing this horrible Japanese accent, claiming that he was Miyazaki Sensei on the phone. And I turned and I looked and I thought, who's this asshole? And that was my first impression of him. And then later that night in the bar, Merriman Sensei introduced us, and I said, I really liked your impression of my instructor. That was our first official meeting. So it was basically love at first sight.
You mean he didn't say to you, Kyoshi, he wasn't like, you're that stalker who's been sitting at the edge of my ring for the last 2 years?
No, not until we were married, like a year or two later, he was like, she stalked me for years. Yes,
yeah, he sees the photo and it's like, wee.
Then I was working at an ad agency in New York, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get a job in the same ad agency here in Toronto. So married a Canadian, able to transfer to this ad agency. Again, it was just, you know, my luck working for me.
That's fantastic. And so did you then become his student immediately?
Another funny story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I asked Miyazaki Sensei if it was okay to train with him because I thought it was the right thing to do. And he said, of course, he is your husband now. So I started training. I actually started training at Northern before we got married. And I can remember, I mean, vividly, like my first class. And I don't know if you guys know Steve Uslis. I know that Hanshi Legacy does. Yes. I love Steve Uslis. I mean, talking about people who have affected your martial arts, impacted your martial arts training. I do a lot of cross training. And the reason that I did was because the very first class that I took, he was teaching. And I nearly died. And I don't mean that like figuratively. I nearly died. And this was the warm up. And after the class, I just said to my husband, I don't think I can handle this. And I thought I was in good shape. I was in my 20s. You know, look at me. I could not have been more wrong. It was just the most humbling thing. So to this day, I credit Steve Uslis for inspiring me to do cross training. And the other thing was when I got to Northern, I mean, I was used to kind of, if you do, you know, kind of traditional sparring, you usually use one or two techniques. You practice those one or two techniques that are going to work well in the ring. So reverse punch, you know, Gyakuzuki, Yokogiri, Maigiri, and you stuck with a very limited repertoire. And it worked until I got to Northern, and I had purple belts cleaning my clock every day. I mean, they're throwing axe kick and spin kick. And I said to Hanshi Barkowski, can they do that? He said, yes, and they can do it very well. So you have those moments where you're transitioning to another dojo, but it was vivid. One, getting humbled during a warm-up, and two, getting humbled every single time we were doing sparring. And here I am with my little reverse punch, bang, 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 bang. So it was an eye-opener coming to Northern.
That's awesome. It's nice to hear we got tough stuff here in Toronto. So I have a question for you, because, you know, everyone on this call has taught friends or loved ones or family or been taught by them, you know. So what was the challenge for you being taught by a loved one, and what's a mistake that people can make when teaching family or close friends or loved ones?
So you just spoke in the past tense, or do you mean in the present tense?
Let's just speak in the universal always.
Okay. In the universal sense, it's always challenging, I think, when you're teaching someone that you have a relationship with and working with someone you have a relationship with, especially for the two of us. I mean, we're very driven people. We're very passionate about what we do. We're very committed to what we do. We don't have our own children. We regard every student in our dojo as our child. So for us, you know, I mean, we try to balance it, but the reality is we come home, we talk martial arts. We go to the dojo, we talk martial arts. We go out to have dinner, we talk martial arts. So it's a good thing we both love martial arts, because I think if you don't have that kind of relationship, if you have a kind of ground rules that might be different in your home, and that's okay, where you say, okay, come home and I shut it down. You know, sometimes you need to come home, and for 10 minutes, you just need to either share a great story that day or maybe vent a little bit. And a good spouse or a good partner, you know, a good family member, a good friend is going to sit patiently and listen. But after a while, they're going to say, you know what, shut that stuff down. With us, it's part of who we are. It's how we met. It's how we continue to do what we do. So I think that finding that balance and remembering that in the dojo, I've never referred to my husband as Caesar in the dojo. He is always Hanshi in the dojo. He has always referred to me as Kyoshi in the dojo. I mean, I think that when we get into the dojo, it's almost like you slip into this other persona, and that becomes the ground rule of that relationship in that particular place. And then we come home, and I mean, I speak my mind. So if I don't think something was going well at the dojo or something was going well business-wise or whatever, you know, I'm pretty open about how I feel. And you know, as calm as my husband is, every now and then, you know, he's going to put his hands up and say no. And I defer to him as Hanshi, but not as my husband. So you have to balance those two components.
Yep, I hear that. Sensei Dauphin, is there anything you want to add or chip in? I see you really nodding along with that, especially the idea of the students as children in a way.
Well, my children are all, I have a daughter who's a black belt, and I have two other daughters who are working their way towards a black belt. I have a son who's a brown belt or was a brown belt. And I have another son who's a green belt. I've seen lots of instructors who are too easy and lots of instructors who are too hard. I think I probably fall on the too hard side with my own kids. I probably am a little bit too hard on them sometimes. Mostly because I just want them to have their own identity. When my partner, who I'm not with anymore, I just always kept it in my mind that she wasn't my student. So I had that benefit. She was actually Hanshi Legacy student. And I just treated her like she wasn't my student, like she was another instructor on the floor. But like Kyoshi Marion said, always referred to her as sensei. She always referred to me as sensei. There's never an issue with any of that. She never ever tried to, I was higher ranking, so she never tried to supersede my rank, and I never tried to make her feel like she was lesser than me when I was in the dojo. which I don't think you should do with anybody. You should just feel like you have more experience and you're the one running the show because you have the program, you have the information that you're trying to get out, and they're there to get it. So you don't make people feel bad about that. You just make anybody toe the line that that's what has to happen right now, whether it's your daughter, your son, your wife, your mother, your father, whoever it is, you're leading the class. You have to lead and get the information out.
Thanks, Sensei. And Hanshi, I know you have some experience with that. Do you want to talk about that at all, or let what's been said stand?
Are you talking to me?
I am, yeah, just in terms of being partnered or in relation to people you're dating or married to in the dojo.
To me, when you step in a dojo, everything changes. Exactly what Marion said. You're the sensei. Everything falls under that. This is a hierarchy. It's, it's not a democracy. That's just the way it's run.
Thanks, Hanshi.
I just want to ask, Sensei Suino, you train with your wife as well, and she's had those breaks in there to have and raise a child and all of that, and with her back. How do you balance those two components?
I would. Your description resonates very much with us. I think my wife has never called me by my name in the dojo. Refers to me as Sensei. And doesn't hesitate to voice her opinions outside the dojo. Yeah, so I actually think I probably have more trouble with that than she does, because it's very hard for me to take off the mantle of sensei or leader when I get home. And I think I'm getting better at that, but I think I've not been as gentle with my partners in life as I probably should have been, because I don't easily take that belt off, or whatever you want to call it, right, when I get home. I'm learning to. I'm getting there.
So I'd like to ask, maybe just to stir the waters a bit, is when you're a martial artist, you're a martial artist. When you're a priest, you're a priest. And you're a priest whether you're outside of the church or not. So my question basically to ask everyone is, should you take your title off once you leave the dojo floor? A priest doesn't, and we are the leaders. We are now changing the history of martial arts. Should we take it off and take on this other criticism, or is it our place to make everything right?
I'll jump into that. I just wanted to let Kyoshi. Okay, so I guess specifically I would say, are you a Roman Catholic priest, or are you an ordained minister? I mean, it is a valid question, because if you're a Roman Catholic priest, you don't have kids, you're not married, you're devoted only to God, and so you don't have those other burdens, right? But if you're a minister, I don't know. I guess that's a personal answer. I think everybody would know what my answer is, but dad is also a title. Husband is also a title. And then you have to mix them all together, right? You have to mix dad, husband, karate master. You have to mix all those things together to come up with the answer to that question. It's not, but specifically the answer to your question, Sensei, is I am always Kyoshi Dauphin everywhere that I go, in everything that I do, as a father. But I'm also always a father when I come here as Kyoshi Dauphin to lead the class and do the things that I do. So I'm probably skirting the question a little bit, but I don't think, to answer your question specifically, I don't think you should ever have to apologize or be different than you actually are. I think you should always be able to be genuine in all situations.
I just threw it out there to get some reaction.
I like
That's
it.
Why I love you being that's why I love you being my teacher, Hanshi, because it gets the gray matter always stirred. Mm-hmm. We're always thinking.
Yeah, I don't have that answer. I'm thinking about that myself. I teach my girlfriend as well, and she's a white belt, and it's, I'm going to think about that question, Hanshi. I really, that sends some ripples. I like it.
We already know that Sensei Suino has a hard time not being. I've been in his house with him. He's always the sensei.
Yeah, and I'm blessed with a partner who although she doesn't always like it, she respects the value of that kind of strength.
I think it depends too on how your significant other comes to it. You just mentioned that your girlfriend's a white belt and you're teaching her and so on. When I met my husband, I was already a black belt. I was already a competitor, and I was already a ranked competitor and a black belt. So I think even though he's a higher ranked black belt with much more experience, and I defer to that, we do have that peer relationship in that regard. So I think it depends on what rank somebody was when you meet. I don't know. I mean, it's a very complicated, relationships are complicated anyway. So it's just more and more components that we have.
You're seeing a lot of nodding men on the other end of that comment.
Yeah, look at them.
You don't say. Oh, shit. So I want to throw two questions at you that came one after the other, but because I've read the questions, I want to combine it with, stuff we've read out loud about you and that we've read online in researching. And you've mentioned yourself, you love the yoga, the cross training. You've created the programs that are their own extent programs. And so if you could talk about those in combination with these questions from Jennifer Naveau Camsel again, as a woman, are there any physical challenges you've had to struggle with, different than perhaps men, maybe even aging, like a fine wine, of course? And then Victoria added, do you think there's physical, mental, spiritual, business, instructional challenges particular to being women? So obviously some ladies are interested in those aspects, but both of them asked about the physical. And I think that could also, for you, go into talking about some of your cross-training yoga, how you came to that. So run with that however you'd like, Kyoshi.
Okay, as I said, initially I started cross-training because Steve Uslis made me believe that I was just going to die on a dojo floor. So I started doing cross-training then, and I loved cross-training. I go to the gym, I like spinning, I just like stuff. And as I mentioned before, Kim Broncace, who's my best friend north of the border, she and I go to the gym together. And it's, we have this interesting relationship because it's almost like when I'm at the gym with Caesar. We're at the gym, but we're like nowhere near each other. We're training, we're working out. After the gym, we go in and we have our time together. So I think as women, we have the same challenges that men face. I think the martial arts community has changed so much over the past 45, 46 years that, we're going to face the same business challenges. When I look at some of our female directors, we have one director, she runs our Maple School, she and Leslie Kerr, and another director, Dory LaSalva, Tony LaSalva's partner. She runs our Richmond Hill School, and Kim Shrenamanalo, she runs our Willowdale School. We have women in all these different dojo who are running schools, Lucy Vona, Daniela Simonetta Chung. They are very capable women. It doesn't matter that they're females. They're just really capable dojo directors. So to me, it's like secondary, that they happen to be really good dojo directors, really good martial artists, really good human beings who just happen to be female. So I think that has really changed. I don't think there's unique challenges. I would say a lot of them deal with the responsibilities of motherhood, household responsibilities, which still will fall largely to the woman in the house. And even like my husband is great. He does 99.99% of the cooking. He will put the laundry in. He's a guy who knows how to live independently as well. So he's very good in that regard. He's great in that regard. But there are certainly households where, women are going to, as you said, your wife stopped training for 10 years. She had your child and then was raising the child and had all those responsibilities. Typically that will fall to a woman in the house. So I would say that, maybe they have more challenges. I would ask a woman who's running a dojo who has those responsibilities what her impressions are. I mean, I don't have that responsibility at home. I'm free to go to the dojo. I'm free to come home and do what I want, go to the gym, cross train. But women who have those other responsibilities would definitely have a different perspective on how they're directing their dojo and managing them.
Thanks. And I think they're really going to appreciate that answer. A quick comment from Sensei Copeland. Hi, Sensei Copeland. Going back to what we were chatting about Hanshi Legacy's question, he said, we are all like an onion peel off different layers depending on where you are, but you're still an onion. So thanks for that, Sensei. By the way, to the people watching, oh yeah, Sensei Dauphin.
I just want to point out, I wrote a little note here. When Hanshi Legacy had said about when a person approaches you and you have to change their intentions, it was Sensei Copeland who said that. He's the one who said that. And actually, it was very impactful. It's floated around the social network a little bit since. I've seen it more than once, different people quoting it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Sensei. So the one thing I just want to say to the people watching, and Sensei Dauphin mentioned this at the beginning, but just because we've gotten a little sloppy with the timing, and then I tend to start the questions a bit late, we're going to the 8:30, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. As such, I'm going to ask the questions now, but I'm saying that because if anybody's watching, as generally the guy guiding this, I may have let you ask your questions later than usual. If you feather your questions in too late, they won't get asked probably in future. It is what it is. Kyoshi Manzo, are you ready for your 10 questions? All right, you can take as long or as little as you like to answer. First impulses are appreciated. What is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
Depends on the attack. Are you talking about physical move? Your mind has to be engaged first. So regardless of what's coming at you, you got to be able to think first. Turn the switch on or off, as Hanshi Legacy said. But that has to be the first thing that engages the brain, the heart, the spirit.
Who is the most influential martial artist in your life?
My husband.
Who's the most influential martial artist of all time and why?
I mean, my God. I mean, in terms of marquee value, it's got to be somebody like Bruce Lee, but he's not necessarily the most effective. I would say that, you know, when you look at Jigoro Kano, when you look at Miyagi Chojin, I mean, they all have their value. I would ask everybody to, you know, that question. I think, you know, it really depends on your perspective. I got to take a pass on that one.
I think I saw a glimmer of a smile from Sensei Suino on the Kano there. His lip went like that. What excites you most about the next 5 years of your training?
Sorry?
What excites you most about the next 5 years of your training?
Oh, I mean, I will tell you that, I know this sounds kind of cliche, but every time that I take like a quest class with Hanshi Burkowski, I'm learning something new. A new way of looking at something I've been doing for 45 years. You know, that opportunity to kind of learn something new. And at the other end of that spectrum, we have this whole crop of amazing little warriors. I mean, they're teeny tiny little girls that are incredible. So what excites me over the next 5 years is taking what they inspire me to do each day when I'm teaching them, learning as much from them as I do from Hanshi Burkowski at the other end of that spectrum. That's an exciting prospect over the next 5, 10, 20, 25 years.
If heaven exists, what would you like God to say when you get there?
You didn't fuck up too much. Sorry. I told you that was going to come out.
Fucking love it. Fucking love
it. Who's your favorite film and TV martial artist?
Oh. I don't really have one. I don't. I mean, even if I think, no, I got nothing. I mean, there's certainly people that are, you know, incredible stunt people, you know, and incredible performers. But again, I mean, I think the first time I saw Bruce Lee do anything, I was like, oh my God. And now it's like, okay, you know, it is amazing, but no, not really anyone in particular. I think there's young guys, like current guys like Alan Lucy, who I think are extraordinarily talented. They're very athletic. They're very physical. But yeah, there's no one in particular that I would say, oh, that's it.
Which historical martial artist, living or dead, so it doesn't have to be historical, would you want to fight or hardcore train with the most that you've never gotten to?
I don't want to fight any of them.
Okay.
Especially if they've been dead for a while, if you get my name. Again, none really. I mean, I'd love to sit and talk to them about their experiences. We've had the good fortune, like Sensei Suino and Kyoshi Dauphin, we've had the good fortune to be able to travel to places around the world, throughout Asia, through Japan and China and Southeast Asia. So we go to Indonesia and we go to Malaysia. We have met extraordinary martial artists. And, you know, I just love being around them. I love learning from them. I love the energy of it. But there's no one that I want to fight or challenge. You know, I hope I'm still learning from other people all the time.
Sensei Dauphin?
I wonder if you, who is your favorite UFC fighter then? Do you have a favorite UFC?
I'm definitely ignorant when it comes to the UFC. I have no clue. I don't really watch UFC. I mean, Ronda Rousey, I think was an extraordinary technician. And that's not because she's a woman, she's just an extraordinary technician. And I know who she is and I've watched her fight, but I'm not really a fan. So I'll leave that to other people who are much more knowledgeable.
Right on. If everyone in the world could have the greatest benefit you feel martial arts gives, whether they take martial arts or not, what would it be?
Oh, there's so many. There isn't one. There's so many. I mean, I think that I'm always like when I think about everything that has come to me through the martial arts, the physical gains, the emotional, spiritual gains, the very practical things like, you know, meeting my husband and having this wonderful life and being able to teach. I always feel like I'm in Geary deficit. Like I owe the martial arts much more than I can ever repay. So yeah, I would hope that everyone winds up in that place where they always feel like they're in Geary deficit and they have to give back.
I love that. I love that answer. I know Sensei Dauphin does too. Your greatest achievement, your greatest regret?
My greatest achievement, I don't know yet because I'm not there yet. And I mean, I could say I wish I started martial arts sooner, but even that's not true. I mean, I came to it at the right time. It just, everything intersected at the right time. So I don't really have any regrets. And in terms of achievements, I hope it's still out there.
Sensei Dauphin, I see you're writing some stuff down. And again, because we're being a little closer to time this week, you know, if you have some things to say, now would be the time.
A couple things I would say is that as we predicted, many very illustrious martial artists have signed on since when we first got things cracking. So Kyoshi, we have Sensei Tarian. She was very excited when we were in Ottawa this weekend to know that you were going to be on. So she's on the call paying attention. She was very happy to sign in. And I want to say if there's any restaurant owners out there and you need somebody to create a great beef Wellington for you, Sensei Tarian, she's the girl for you, man. That shit rocks. Conrad Copeland is on. Laura and Mike Swick are on. Doug Nipsel is on. And of course we have Hanchi Burkowski is a floor below you and she's on. But a thought I had was that whenever we do a 3-week break, we should always have Kyoshi Manzo on to help us get back into the groove again, because this has been like amazing, right? It's been so easy to come back and have her on as the first guest. So those are a couple of thoughts that I have. You know, I would ask you, Kyoshi Manzo, like, so you said you didn't have, you haven't reached yet your greatest achievement. But I wonder, on the opposite side of that, are there any big hurdles that you had to get by? We've asked that question of a lot of people. Like, so for example, Hunchitarian said that he had a couple dojos burned down. And one of the things that got him going again is that his black belt didn't burn. So I just wonder, it doesn't have to be something like that, but is there anything where it was like, man, that was a hard, outside of Kyoshi Uslis, who we all would agree is a hard barrier to get past. Is there anything else where it was like, you were like, shit, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get past this?
I think everybody goes through stages in their training. I mean, I'm going to be 67. So you go through stages in your training where you say, okay, I have arthritis. I've got, I've had surgery on both knees. I've got surgery on both shoulders. You start to, kind of take stock and look at the scars and say, how much longer? And then suddenly it's another 10 years down the road and you're saying, how much longer? I figure I can keep going at this regardless of the obstacles, as long as there's good surgeons who can keep putting me back together. Just give me the glue gun, put me back together. We're all good. I think everyone, it doesn't matter if it's martial arts, outside martial arts, everyone is going to encounter challenges. And you're either going to say, hey, you know what? I'm getting up, I'm facing this. I always, get up and just do it. Or you can say, well, that's just too hard. When people are talking about, well, these are unprecedented times. Well, they're certainly challenging, and some might say unprecedented. But I was reminding one of our young directors that a few years ago, in 2008, we were looking at a housing market crash, a depression or recession, I should say. It was borderline, it was a recession. They were digging up the street in front of our dojo for 5 damn years. There were wooden bridges, and Caesar kept taking pictures and saying, welcome to Kandahar. So we had all that going on. He said, yeah, but we didn't have a pandemic. I said, and H1N1 hit us. There's always going to be bullshit going on. Yeah. And either you say, you know what, I'm here, let's go. Or you say, I'm just going to give up. So I would just say, yes, there are always going to be obstacles, but just keep going. Just keep kicking and punching.
So I appreciate that. I don't know if Hanshi was doing what I think he was doing, but I leaned forward when you said 67. I was like, what the fuck?
What the hell, right?
What, are you fucking kidding me?
No, gentlemen, if I'm I'm lying up. I'm going to tell you I'm 77 and you're going to say, yes. Yeah, martial arts will keep you young. There's a tip. If people want to know, martial arts will keep you young. So,
well, we all know this, but I want to chip into this. It'll be the last question before we go around the horn. But this is something everyone has their own answer for, probably online. But in case anyone's struggling or whatever, why? You're 67. You've had this massive, long, successful career. Why tomorrow do you bother getting up to do it again? You're past retirement age. Why?
I love it. I'm in love with it. I love it. It's whether I'm teaching, last night we were teaching little teeny tiny white belts. Many of them now come with different challenges. So they have emotional challenges, they have behavioral challenges. And they're dealing with all this stuff that we as adults are finding impossible to understand. It's pretty easy at that point to say, oh God, I'm cashing out, I'm out. Instead, you can make a difference. You make a difference every time. As Caesar says, they're one step closer to that black belt and beyond, or they're one step out the door, and it's up to you to help them figure out that path. So the reason I keep doing it is because I still love it. I hope I never stop being in love with it. I mean, that's probably the same for you guys. Hachi Legacy, do you still love martial arts?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sensei Dauphin, same question.
I love it.
He's nodding. Okay. Sensei Suino?
It's who I am. I got no choice.
It's your DNA. I got no choice. Exactly. And same thing. I don't know if you're Sensei Benson or.
You just call me Sean. I love it. I structure my weeks around when I'm training what, and everything else comes after.
Still in love.
Yeah.
There you go.
So what we do, Kyoshi, is, as you may or may not know, is we're going to go around the horn and each person gets to say their closing thoughts, and then we'll give the last word to you. So Hanshi Legacy, is there anything you want to say as a last note to our guest?
Yeah, it's a great interview, and it was really nice to see you again.
You as well.
And I'm sure that this is not the end of your visit. So thanks for coming on.
I'm moving into your basement, so there you go.
Bring your karate equipment.
I am.
Yep. We'll make sure the Wi-Fi is good down there. Sensei Suino?
Kyoshi, one of the things we've been talking about since day one of this, because it started during COVID, is we've met all these amazing people like yourself, and we can't always get together because of the barriers of COVID. Since you're in sports management, would you please start thinking about that big event maybe put your head together with Hunchitarian, figure out that big event where we're going to have all the punch, kick, choke, and chat masters together to hang out, to train, to teach. Let's figure out how to do that. That would be banging if we could make that happen.
Awesome, awesome.
That would be great.
Sensei Dauphin?
This has been so much fun. Like I have enjoyed this thoroughly. Kyoshi Marion, I'd love to get together with you. I'd be so bold. I'd just love to train with you sometime, do some katas together, do some cardio kickboxing, go through some yoga poses. It would be awesome. I'd love to do that with you. I want to also say to Hunter Burkowski, congratulations, man. Like, you hit the jackpot here, right? So,
are you recording this?
It's recording. It lives in posterity.
Right. Final thoughts for myself. We both have strong moms. I loved hearing you talk about your mom, your blind mom, raising 6 kids alone, and that's just part of your DNA and how you were raised. That's amazing. I honestly, I wish I could meet your mom. Like, I'd love to talk to her. Maybe we should have her on the show sometime. She should be a person that we should get on here and talk to.
Oh, no. You don't want to talk to her. She'll be bringing the Jesus like you cannot believe.
Hey, can I get an amen?
She will be bringing Jesus. But I also have
Yes.
4 amazing kick-ass sisters. You want to know where my martial arts training started? When I was a kid, fighting with all of them.
I love that. I like that you said that martial arts came to you. Right? You didn't go, I feel kind of very similar to that. You said that. I feel like martial arts came to me. Like, I didn't go chase it down. It was just always there and always calling me to come to it. I like that when you talked about how through self-defense, we just develop this resilience. You just develop it. I like that when you said that it's always the first day of business. I'm going to take that here into this school. Every day is the first day of business. It's not the 6th day of business. Tomorrow will be the first day of business here at Legacy Shorin in Kitchener. It'll be the first day of business tomorrow here. Keeping the school going with integrity. It's not about just keeping it going. It's about having that integrity while you're keeping it going. I also liked when you just talked about these strong female presences, and that they just happen to be female. They're all these other things first. They're good business owners. They're good martial artists. They're good. It's all these other things first. And that's the same for men too. You know, we're all just these other things and we're a man. You're all these other things and you're a woman. We're all these things and we're human, right? Like I like when you said that your most effective move is to think first. That's a brilliant answer. I'm really I like when you said more than you can repay, you know, Giri. You're always in a Giri deficit. Hanchi Legacy asks the instructors to always name their dojos, internal name. And the name that I chose 25 years ago was Giri Dojo. So in Legacy Shorin-ryu, Sensei Legacy knows that the students here are a member of Giri Dojo within Legacy Shorin-ryu, because we always owe back to martial arts and none of us are greater than it. I just like the last things you said too. There's always going to be bullshit going on. There's always been bullshit going on. There's always going to be bullshit going on. Like, it's our job to overcome that bullshit and just keep going, right? Like, that's beautiful. And then why are you doing it? Because you love it. And we all love it. And thank you so much for being on here. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, it's really been a fun night. And it's, as I said, for those of you who joined us later, I have my pajama pants under my gi top. I mean, this is after my bedtime. And it's so much fun. I'm honored to be here. I hope I didn't bore anybody. I hope, I'm so honored that everybody took time out of their night, out of their day, especially with all the stuff that's going on, to kind of hang in here and listen to me babble. So, I had so much fun, and I hope that everybody else had a little bit of fun too. And I learned as much. I learned
we
so
all
much
had
from you
fun.
guys.
we all had fun. So if they didn't, screw those people. Or sorry, I'll say it in New Yorker. If they didn't have fun, fuck those people.
Take the bus, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, take the bus. No, I'll tell you, it's like a big party here, and you guys are doing such an awesome job with this format. And I know that Caesar's really talking it up, but I think that it's so entertaining and so informative. So thank you all for your commitment to this as well. It's such an informative, fun outlet for us.
Thank you. It's really our pleasure. And I just want to add on, I don't want to take too much time, but when you talked about unprecedented times, there's different versions of all this being precedented. I really love that. And I saw this online. I'm going to make it quick, but I'm 45. If I was born in the year 1900, when I was 14, there would have been World War I. Then right when that ended and you're cheering, the Spanish flu hits. Then you have an okay run and the Greatest Depression of all time hits. Then when that's done, you're cheering and World War II hits. And then you're 45 and it's done. That's like other people have lived through very, very difficult times as well. And I really loved your perspective on that. Like this, what we do is we get through this, and we can sometimes, I think, get a little myopic and go, oh my God. And it's like, no, we got stuff to work through, but other people better than me have been through much worse. Such a pleasure to hear you talk. There's such an authenticity about just your engagement and the way you want to engage with us as much as we want to engage with you. And I think what Hanshi said is right. I definitely hope we haven't seen the last of you on our show. And again, just your engagement is such a pleasure. I just want to, before we give you the last word, next week, October 22nd, you want to sign up. We have the Iceman, Jean-Yves Theriault is going to be our guest. The week after, we have Paul Martin. Sensei Suino, do you want to say a quick word about Paul Martin?
Paul Martin is the preeminent non-Japanese sword expert on the planet, and perhaps the preeminent sword expert on the planet, and an incredibly nice human being.
So please sign up for that. You're just going to want to get that for yourselves, not for us. Kyoshi, take her away.
As I said, it's just been a blast. I mean, I think you guys are just doing such a great job, and it's such a relaxed format. Somebody was saying to me, oh, do you prepare things? Do they give you the questions in advance? I'm like, nah, we're just going to sit and talk. And that's exactly what it is. It's just real and it's authentic, and it's just, there's so much commonality to it. It doesn't matter gender or age or, we always say that the dojo is kind of this its own universe where age doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter, your race, your creed, your ethnic background, none of that stuff matters. You put your gi on. In this case, you sit around, and this is like a dojo too. We're all learning from one another. So to me, this is, it just, martial arts is such an amazing way for people to find common ground. With all the stuff that's going on in the world, where there's so much division and so much polarization, everybody comes together. They put their gi and their belt on, or they put whatever they're training in. They get on the floor, they kick, they punch, they choke, and they just find that common space. So I want to thank you guys for bringing this electronic dojo to the forum and sharing it with everybody. To me, this, like I said, this is just fun, and it's so much learning, and it's so good to see Hanshi Legacy. I mean, it's been so long, and I'm so happy to see you. Very, very nice to see you guys. And it's very nice to meet some new friends as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Kyoshi.
Hope we can see you soon. Sometime.
Okay, I'm coming to your basement.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Tori and Robert behind the scenes. There's a few other people I forgot to mention. We'll get you next week. We'll see you in a week, everybody. Be safe.
I'm training hard, Nick.
Let's do it together soon.
All right.
All right.